In a faraway land called Washington Heights.
Lights up on Washington Heights, up at the break of day. I wake up and I got this little punk I gotta chase away. Pop the grate at the crack of dawn, sing while I wipe down the awning.
Hey y'all, good morning.
It was dope. It was amazing filming up there because that's where the stories about Washington Heights. So the fact that we were there, shooting there, and you can't make it up, right? The music coming from people's windows, right? The fire hydrants open for real. Kids splashing cars on when they driving through the block, like people riding motorcycles through the shop. That's what you want. That's the pulse of the neighborhood. You hearing the sounds of the traffic and horns beeping. Like, you can't make that up. You can try, but there's nothing like being in the mix and being in the place that you're telling the story about. Washington Heights is the main character of the story, and I'm glad that the main character in the story was in it.
To see the ladies in the salon, like to see Vanessa strutting down the street, to have Nina be across the street and looking at real awnings of like, oh, her father's storefront is shrinking and gentrification is happening here. It was incredible. And then, to have like filming, for instance, the car dispatch, Benny's dispatch, and they're in that location. They're in a retrofitted, we did some design on it, but it was a car dispatch. And it was so sweet seeing Benny and Nina flirt in that location. It felt more real, and you could imagine, oh, this is where they were when they first started flirting, when they were, younger teenagers. One of my favorite things was being in Abuela Claudia's house. We don't do that in the stage production. It all takes place out on the block, basically. And so to get to go into Abuela Claudia's personal space, because that personal space has been claimed by the block, because she has claimed the block as her children. So I think for them to mourn her in that apartment, I think for them to play bingo in that apartment, I think for Abuela Claudia to give Nina advice, very personal advice in that apartment, it just, for me, that lands a lot heavier than only seeing Abuela Claudia in the exterior locations of the stage play.
There's nothing like the real thing. That's like a full stop. Washington Heights is really, it got some beautiful, beautiful vistas and a lot of heart and soul in its landmarks, like the High Bridge pool, that pool, like so many people have stories that are centered in that pool. People, went into labor, people got, engaged, people got into fights, who knows, broke up, whatever. Families, love happened. It's a big hub.
Filming in the Heights just brings such an authenticity that really you can see through the screen. And honestly, you feel like you're a part of it. You feel like you've lived in this neighborhood your whole life and you're like watching a story about you.
And we would actually have a cafecito con leche at the Dominican bakery, and we would see our characters walking down the street. Oh my God, there's Abuela Claudia. It's like she's almost dressed like me. And there's Daniela, and there's Usnavi. And we were contributing also economically. And we were mirroring each other. It was the perfect place.
Well, there was just an energy that I'm so glad that Lynn and Johnny fought for doing it actually in the Heights. I can't conceive that it would be done anywhere else. But
there was it in Toronto.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you got Stoops there in Toronto. You got Stoops. There was an awareness. The audience, the community was aware of the fact that the movie was being made. They were aware of the fact that the creator of the film, who lives in that neighborhood, the writer of the film, she also lives in that neighborhood. So there was a sense, it was palpable, that sense of positivity, and I think it just kind of boosted us in a great way. We didn't have dedicated our lunch. That was very different for me. Our lunch periods were not. It's usually on movie sets. It's usually catered, and they were very specific about using
The local restaurants.
Local restaurants.
To,
I
make
thought
sure
that was
yeah.
not big ups.
It was important to Jon and Lynn and Kiara and all of us that we actually go to Washington Heights and film there. And not only film there for the authentic locations, but also to bring the neighborhood in as a character and to support the neighborhood. I mean, we ate lunch in local restaurants every single day for months. We didn't do catering halls intentionally because we wanted to support the community. We wanted to use the local small businesses in that community. And there are a lot of people from the neighborhood who are extras in the movie, and artists, a local artist, Noah, who plays Graffiti Pete, is a local artist in that neighborhood. So it was really important to bring as much of an authenticity and a true life character representation in the movie.
Fun fact, I am the voice of the announcer at the top of the play, of the musical, the Broadway off Broadway, where the radio announcer goes, "It's going to be a scorcher."
You know, it was fun being able to do it in both of those ways. You know, to do it on the stage and as well as do it on the screen. They're definitely different mediums, but you know, this guy is. It's just really about just doing your best to tell the truth, to just tell the story. Like, the story's there, and those characters were different. The way I did it on the stage was different from the guy that I did on the screen. Obviously, you have a different director, you have different castmates. Your vibe with your castmates, right? The lines were different in the film, right? Usnavi, even, it was funny. Like, I talked to Chris Scott, our choreographer, and I said, Usnavi doesn't typically dance, and he said, Usnavi in our movie is gonna dance. That he's gonna get down. And that was because Chris Scott and I were at a salsa club in LA, and he saw me dancing at the club and was like, "Yo, bro, we gotta get you out here getting down."
I live in Washington Heights, and so when we went to do the location scouts, I joined, and we hit a lot. Our location scout guy was also from Washington Heights, so we hit a lot of wonderful areas. It's a very interesting. The topography of the neighborhood is fascinating. The geology, like, there's very old bedrock that they've basically not figured out how to totally flatten. So there's these steep streets, and there's a lot of lookout points and cliffs. And so you get this kind of like very urban feel right next to something that is as spectacular as any vacation you would take anywhere in the world in terms of natural landscape. So it was raining and cold on those location scout days. There was like a lot of umbrellas. We're in the van, we're done, we're cold. I wouldn't say we're tired because we're all excited. We looked at a lot of good spots. We had to choose a block. That was hard. That was a big goal of the location scout. And John was like, is there anywhere else? Is there anywhere else, Kiara, that I should see so I know what life is like in this neighborhood? And we were actually very near the block that we ended up choosing for our block in Washington Heights. And that's just around the corner from the High Bridge Pool. And I was like, well, we're not too far from the High Bridge Pool. It's not open this time of year, but there's a gate that you could peek in. I'm sure the pool's empty. I was like, do you want to check it out? Like, that's pretty central. Like, my kids go swim there in the summer. Like, there's a lot of memories. There's a lot of party happening there. And then even people who aren't in the pool are like picnic, like they have tents and family picnics and stuff all around it. And he's like, yeah, let's go see it. So we rolled up and we kind of snuck around to the back and could see through the gate, and the pools were empty. But then we get back in the van and he's like, how could we use it though? How could we use, like, what haven't we solved yet? And I was like, 96,000. And he was like, huh. He was like, you mean like a big number? I was like, yeah, we could do like hip hop synchronized swimming. That's how I put it. And so then we kind of laughed. That was one of, by the way, 250 detailed conversations we had that day. So he was like, let's sleep on it. I was like, great, let's sleep on it. And then a day or two later, I got a text from Jon, and he was like, are you serious about this? Because it's a big budget ask, but what do you think? Could we make it work story-wise? I was like, yes, absolutely. And in fact, that really got us out of the bodega, got us to somewhere new. And it feels like summertime is when you're dreaming big. You're like floating on your back and imagining, you're in the Caribbean or something. I don't know. It just really seemed aligned with the vibe of the song and the party vibe of the song. So yeah, he was like, all right, let's do it. And we got the budget and the city was able to make it happen.
I found out about In the Heights actually through Hamilton, through Lin. Looking through his discography, I saw in the Heights album, and I was like, oh, let me give this a listen. And just immediately fell in love, because the music, it just sounded like what I hear every day, out in the street. It wasn't your stereotypical musical theater music. And from there, I kind of took it upon myself to go and do the research, and immediately fell in love with the story, because there were so many similarities between my childhood and my neighborhoods.
When I started writing In the Heights, the stage play, I was new to New York City. I moved to New York in August 2004, and I started writing In the Heights in October 2004. I was still in my 20s. I had no children. And the world was new to me, and I was possibly like a little timid and a little apologetic for like breathing air, and I've become a mature woman since then. I've had 2 kids. I've, written plays that have been successful. I've written plays that have not been successful. I've earned my stripes, and I think I'm much more confident. And so as I developed In the Heights, the stage play, and then just lived with what I had created and saw what I had created, I understood what I had created in a different way. People are like, oh, you're Nina. And yes, because I'm first generation college student, and it was a big culture shock for me getting to college. But I'm also Kevin and Camila, who did not make it to the movie, because I create jobs. My jobs are roles, but I do consider myself a job creator in the community, like Kevin and Camila, so I'm more than one character, and I'm in a lot of the different generations. The actors they peel back new layers of the onion with every production. But I will say, I wasn't, for instance, seeing Anthony Ramos in the Kennedy Center production and having ideas about the screenplay so much. Those ideas came more as I really wrestled with, how do I not make In the Heights feel like a Xerox copy of a different experience, but make it its own film experience with the integrity of a film. I just didn't want it to feel static or like a museum piece or something like that, like some sort of like weird wax figure in Madame Tussauds museum, so. And it was in solving those sorts of questions, scene by scene, what scenes work in a screenplay and what scenes all of a sudden honestly are like boring, for lack of a better word, in a screenplay. Okay, so what do we do about that? And why is that? So those were some of the considerations that go into like developing the characters and thinking in new ways.
Before I did these interviews this morning, I looked at my calendar. It was 2011 that I was on the set in Atlanta, Georgia, with a movie that I was producing for Disney, and we engaged Lin to be an actor in that movie. And so we were on the set one day that summer, and he came over to me and said, another studio was going to make In the Heights as a movie, but they've decided not to make it. And he asked me, would you like to do it? And I was so honored and flattered, because I did not produce the musical on Broadway. And I thought, wow, this is a great opportunity. I love this story. And so it began the journey. And I remember thinking about, okay, so who can direct this movie? And I had just met Jon M about a year earlier. And I remember hearing from him how passionate he was about musicals and how passionate he was about music and dance. And he was just working on Step Up. And I put a little note in my brain, I wonder if I'll work with this guy one day on Broadway or in a movie, musical or something. So I called Lin and I said, what do you think of Jon Chu directing the movie? And he said, oh my God, my wife Vanessa and I had our first date at Step Up. I love him. That's a great idea. So it was kismet. It was very clear that Lin wanted to, that Jon wanted to honor this story, honor this community, honor the spirit of this story, and yet understanding that we had to open it up and widen the lens from, a 50-foot proscenium stage to now multiple set pieces, going outside in Washington Heights, being on street corners, being in locations in Washington Heights, shooting the bridge itself, the real bridge, not a drop of a painting of a bridge. So all of that was really important. And also the casting was really essential. We were all aligned in authenticity. Let's make new stars. Let's bring artists from all over the world that represent Latin culture, and let's bring some Broadway faces in, but let's bring some folks in from the music side or other areas that have not been seen in America. And then of course, Lin, what are you going to do? Day one, he said, I'm not going to play Usnavi. And we're like, Jon and I are like, you've got to be in this movie, dude. Somehow we've got to figure it out. It's been a really a great 10-year journey, but that also had a lot of bumps in the road. We were supposed to come out last year and we were delayed a year. And when that happened, there was a lot of disappointment, but we understood and it was the right decision. And here we are coming out. Again, serendipity, this great little engine that is coming out right when everybody's ready to, hopefully they've been vaccinated, they're ready to start their summer, they're ready to be in a room with other people, they're ready to enjoy that communal experience of a movie theater. And I just got to see it Mother's Day at a sneak preview. And it was, I started crying. It was being in a room with an audience and hearing the laughter and they applaud after the opening credits come up. And so it's just great. I'm really excited for the world to get to see this very soon.
This is the moment when you do better than me, because you can see a future that I can't.
We can pay off the debts we owe.
We can tell everyone we know. We are not powerless. We are powerful.
We'll get the dough, and once we get going, we're